From the first frame to the last, it's clear that so much thought was put into every single detail of this film. When the goal is perfection, where can we even start to discuss this classic? From the script to the acting and the technical details of how it was shot, it's all worth discussing. So let's get into it. I want to start with the thematic lighting. Many people have discussed how dark this film is, with lots of blacks and browns and shadowy lighting. This is most obvious in the theater, when the room is dark and the screen often doesn't provide enough light to see by. Then, when we do get those big bright moments, they're all the more impactful. While the Corleones were plagued by grief and terror, the inevitable consequences of their business endeavors, the film hinges on its exploration of family, and it's in those big family moments where we're awash in bright light. The first of these moments is Connie and Carlo's wedding. We're witness to all the joy of this special day, with the Corleones' courtyard full of music and laughter. However, business isn't entirely absent, as we also see Luca Brasi there in the corner, making Kay Adams nervous. And as Kay and Michael are sitting in the shade, we get a dimmer scene to remind us of that business as Michael frankly discusses his family with Kay. That intrusion becomes even more clear with the contrast of the home's interior. Don Vito Corleone's office is shadowy and dark, so distinctly removed from the bright sunny event taking place outside, and yet entirely intertwined. This is the core theme of the film. Family and business are inseparable, and yet they're always in conflict. This is reflected in the lighting throughout the film. Let's take a look at some of Michael's significant moments. His final brightly lit moment in the film isn't the moment when his wife is killed in Sicily by a car bomb meant for him. Yes, it's a daytime scene, but compared to his wedding, it's quite muted. So his final moment of brightness, of family happiness, is that wedding. Conversely, we don't get bright, joyful lighting in the scene where Michael goes back to Kay. This moment of courtship is dimly lit, indicating that the relationship can't compare to Michael's happiness with Apollonia. One other notable bright moment in the film is Vito Corleone's death. While throughout the film he's often shrouded in darkness, he gets a bright moment at the end of his life, a moment outside of his business responsibilities. Shortly before this moment, he tells Michael that only women and children can be careless, and men can never indulge in such activity. But then we get a scene from him simply enjoying his family life, playing with his grandchild in the garden, out in the bright sun. The scene remains bright as he dies a natural death, and in the movie's visual language, this is the only happy moment of his life that we see. Now let's move on from lighting and look at other visual storytelling elements. Coppola creates the composition of each scene to portray a great sense of emotion. Let's start by going back to Michael's relationships. While Michael is courting Apollonia, we get a scene in which they are going for a walk, and the camera follows behind the couple, leaving us, the audience, behind, along with sisters, cousins, and possibly even Apollonia's mother. We all want to know what's developing between them, but we're left wondering as we're not privy to their conversation. This distancing serves to paradoxically create a sense of intimacy between the couple. Later, when Michael returns to Kay, they go for a similar walk, but this time, the camera is in front of them, and we're listening to their conversation. Following behind, instead of the family members investing in the burgeoning relationship, we see a black car serving as protection, reminding us of Michael's role in the business. And returning to the wedding, while the dancing is mostly shot at a distance, we also see figures moving by closer and out of focus, creating a greater sense of depth in the scene and bringing the audience into the action. These kinds of choices help the audience feel connected to the characters and the story of the film. Scene composition plays a vital role in the storytelling throughout the movie. But there are two more notable examples I want to mention. The first is when Michael and Kay learn that Vito has been shot. We're watching from the streets as the two walk down a sidewalk. At one point, they pass behind a column and are fully obscured from view. Then, as they emerge from behind the column, Kay's expression has completely shifted, revealing that they've seen the news article about Don Corleone's shooting. Finally, no discussion of scene composition and focus would be complete without one of the most memorable moments in the film, Connie's confrontation with Michael about her husband Carlo's death. Michael is in the office with several other men conducting his business, and Connie is making her accusations. But the camera remains fixed on Michael's face, allowing everything else to fade out of focus. Despite our slightly obscured view, we can't look away as Michael betrays no emotion. Last but certainly not least, let's talk a little about the stellar acting in this film. Coppola gets great performances from everyone in this film, and it would take far more time than we have to discuss the nuances of even one of these performances, so let's just look at a few standout moments and excellent choices by these acclaimed actors. No one's going to doubt the acting chops of Marlon Brando, but there's one moment that perfectly demonstrates his amazing talent. Grief is not an easy emotion to portray on cue. It's a complicated, messy emotion, and in attempting to show a character's grief, many an actor hasn't quite gotten it right, breaking the suspense of disbelief that keeps us invested in the characters and the story on the screen. But when Brando as Vito Corleone breaks down after instructing the Undertaker to do his best with Sonny's body, for the boy's mother's sake, the grief is real, it's palpable, and it's perhaps the best portrayal of this complex emotion that we have ever had in a movie. Michael is played masterfully by Al Pacino, with many subtle choices that give us so much insight into the character's conflicted inner life. At the start of the film, Michael seems to be disgusted by the family business, but as he talks about it with Kay at Connie's wedding, there's a hint of excitement in his voice. He's not supposed to get involved in the business, but he's drawn to it nonetheless. As he gets pulled into the business anyway when war breaks out and his father is shot, Michael shows a new side of himself, growing cold as he tells Tom Hagen that it's not personal. But Pacino doesn't fully shut down, and we still see Michael's emotion, and we know that it is actually quite personal for him. Pacino's subtle acting choices are apparent if you watch Michael's eyes closely throughout the film. He starts out wide-eyed and full of nervous energy, which culminates when he kills Sollozzo and Captain McCluskey. But by the end of the film, as Connie is accusing him of having her husband Carlos murdered, his eyes are relaxed and calm, indicating his ascendance as the head of the family and the business. The Godfather is one of those perfect movies that has held up well despite being made decades ago, and this is largely due to its relatable themes. Yes, it's a mobster movie, and most of us aren't in the mob, but it's also a movie about the ever-present conflict between family and business, and that's something we can all relate to on some level. So the next time you sit down to rewatch this classic film, consider how your choices about your work and your family intersect, how your relationships change, and how you can relate to these characters. Every choice has consequences, and that's ultimately what The Godfather shows us by examining the lives of the Corleones.